I got to begin today by saying I'm sorry to my beloved co-host. I went back, did some digging, and found that I do in fact say purr. More on that after this quick intro. Welcome back to the PHNX Mercury Show, presented to you live from Studio K, presented by Circle K, this fine Friday morning, and I just got to get this out of the way. In case you guys didn't know, I'm a little legendary with those thunder sticks, you know? So someone last night gave them to me. Shout out to you, Leah. And you want to make sure that I get the win. And you'll have to zoom in a little bit, but these are definitely the win sticks. So they are marked accordingly. I don't intend on opening those losing sticks anytime soon. Maybe if not for like a week or two. So yeah, shout out to you guys for being in the chat today. Welcome back to PHNX Mercury Show. Again, I'm your host, Erika Day. I'm joined by Stephen Pridgegarner, who, again, I owe a real big apology to.
A-Purr-logy. I showed you how to pronounce it a little earlier, and you have not applied what was taught yet.
Yeah, I do owe him a Purr-logy if he does, because the other show, if you watched the last show, Stephen made a little, he really tried to get me on this by setting me up to say purr to him, and it went over my head. Like,
put it on a tee, threw it off the backboard.
It was a dime pass from Alyssa Thomas, and it went out of bounds.
Yeah,
and
she smoked the layup.
Hey!
She smoked the layup.
But so I had to start out today by saying super sorry for all that. You know, I don't like to be a liar, as y'all know that I do like to be right most of the time. So it grinded my gears all week. All week I've been laying in bed like, oh man, I gotta apologize to Stephen on Friday for being wrong. And so yeah, I'm paying the price for that today, but at least we got a big Mercury dub to talk about. So big shouts for Kevin for being behind the Mac today, doing all the X's and O's. Y'all don't really know how much work it is to pull what he's pulling right now. So huge shouts to Kevin Thomas, our main man around Mercury Town. So
U of A's own.
Yeah. So
I don't actually work that hard. I just, scratched my car up pretty good this morning trying to get in here. And that'll dampen the mood so fast you have no idea.
You know, I talked to Kevin when he was on the way to the office. Our guy was running a little late, and he sounded like he was in a real good mood. And then he walks in today, and dude looks like
I was in an awful mood when I called you.
But even
like
still,
the worst of moods.
You sounded pretty optimistic that everything would happen the way it's supposed to be.
As long as I get in on time, Merc graphics will get made. The show will go on. We'll have a good time. I'll do Wildcats at noon. And then I get to that little bend in the under of the parking garage, and someone's a little too close to the line. I'm like, oh, I can get by. And then on the side of my car, on the pole, because I thought I could get by. And that's not what this show is about. But you asked, and now I've answered. So, yeah.
Poor Kevin, man. Poor Kevin. Nonetheless, though, big Merc dub. So, even though he's in a little bit of a mood right now, eventually, as we talk.
The Merc always helps.
Yeah.
The Merc being great, that always boosts my spirits, not going to lie.
Kevin texted me last night about the Lexi Held experience, and I don't think we can quite call it that yet. Because, when I think of an experience, I think of Mr. Caleb Love himself, and that really is the end of the experiences that I've lived through. But that's okay, because we got our own rookie experience. I think we can call it a rookie experience. Mm-hmm. So, because, with the last few games that the Mercury have come back to win, a different rookie has stepped up each time. And Lexi Held being the one in this particular game, but... and we're going to have a whole segment about Lexi here shortly, so I don't want to talk too much about it. But yeah, as Lindsay said in the comments, they better protect Lexi Held at all costs. Mm-hmm. This team is very, very injured right now. They signed, since we've last talked to you guys, they re-signed Megan McConnell, and now suddenly she's out for 3 to 4 weeks with a leg injury after her very first game in a Mercury jersey. So it's just definitely been a challenging time for the Phoenix Mercury right now.
Yeah. Even if you script it, which every team does, injuries into the fold for their regular season process, anticipating that it's going to happen, in some capacity, you just have no control over what capacity, nor do you have control over the timing in which these things happen. You have to be able to react and adjust on the fly. And needless to say, when you have a brand new team that's constructed and 2/3 of the big three players and 3/5 of the starting lineup or deemed starting lineup are just literally not available, that's going to shift the identity you're playing towards. That's going to shift the context of play that you can play out of. That's going to shift the ways that defenses guard and prepare for you. That's going to shift the psyche of approach for every player that's in the rotation because players are going to be tasked with doing more. It's a lot of shifting going on, a lot less establishing habits and establishing principles, and it's a whole lot more, like Nate said, for lack of better phrasing, just hooping. You just got to go out there and play ball. And in those moments, because every team goes through adversity from injury in some capacity over the course of their regular season marathon, it's not a deck of cards that's handed out equally at any given moment.
It sure is not equal for the
No.
Mercury right now.
Not at all. But it's in those moments where whether it's basketball, football, baseball, soccer, lacrosse, hockey, track and field, whatever other sports you might play, golf, flag football, doesn't matter whatever other sports you might play. It's in those moments where the character of a team is both tested and rises to the surface level and honestly takes on even more of a lens that is looked through than when the team is typically held together. This team has every bit of the makings of a team that's going to persevere, that's going to be prideful, that's going to be competitive, that's going to have culture that they fall back on when adversity hits, rather than multiple players going their separate ways and no one having a streamlined avenue to get into the ultimate goal, which is to win in those moments. And the fact that the Phoenix Mercury just continue to find ways to win might not necessarily be a repeatable process every night, but to have multiple ways in which they've gone about winning these games, from a deficit coming back, having a lead squandered, and then having to figure out how to just get across the finish line, meeting adversity with their own resistance, but also having their own resistance to meet adversity with. They have it. They have all of that. And I feel like it's baked into the individual character of multiple players, including the coaching staff, but it's also culminated into a team identity to where when things hit the fan, everybody gets a whole lot closer to shoulder or elbow to elbow, rather than having space to allow for that resistance to slide through and divide them even more.
Yeah, I mean, I feel like we know more about this team's identity with every game, and last night was definitely no exception to that rule. I mentioned it to you last night. The defensive switching was apparent, especially in that second half last night, and we'll have a clip of Nate Tibbetts here in just a second talking about it. But, I mean, I was really impressed with the defensive switching in the second half in particular, and I think that that's such an important asset to this team because we've talked about how they want to play positionless basketball on the offensive end a lot, but obviously, it all starts on the defensive end, and so the fact that they're able to get those stops through anyone, 1 through 5, is very, very important. And the fact that they're doing that, while depending on their bench pretty much is pretty impressive.
It's very impressive. And it speaks to not just the scheme versatility that the team has or the versatility of individuals, but across multiple lineups. Because when they get fully healthy, they're going to be looking to play multiple different styles of basketball over the course of a game. And honestly, just looking to continue to stay in the position of being ahead of their opponents when they have the ball and dictating to them with their defense. And the fact that we just continue to learn more and more about this team. The more adversity that comes forth, we just continue to learn more. Tired legs, a short roster, not having enough players to always go 5-on-5 at practice because of the injuries so far this season. A lot of things going on. A lot of excuses could be made, but instead of making excuses, they get closer and they figure out new ways to win. And a lot of that stems from their ability to sustain on the defensive end and playing multiple styles of defense. Yesterday, they went to a whole lot more switching because they wanted to stay out of rotation and they wanted to just be able to flatten out a defense more than conceding the advantages for them to work off of. And because of that, we continue to learn more about them. Switching is not something that they've done nearly as much as they did on percentage last season. Last season, they were probably the biggest switch team in the league just because of the injuries and the personnel that they had. But this season, they've had to do it a whole lot less because of the personnel. But it's obviously something that they could get to when they wanted to. Naturally, not having players in the rotation puts you in a bind as far as that goes. So you have to be a little bit more experimental or kind of push things to the forefront sooner than you want to. And again, no excuses. They just respond. And we see the likes of this comeback that they had, 18-1 run the last 3 minutes and some change of last night's game to ultimately come back and win following a late timeout from Nate. So again, how do you respond is what the question always is. And needless to say, they have a bigger response than any other team in the W right now.
Well, and I don't mean to jump all over the place, but I did want to mention last night, the beginning of the game was an absolute blank show, an absolute blank show. Like crap show, crap shoot, whatever you want to call it. It was, I have been to over 30 WNBA games over the last 365 days, and none of them have been, y'all have heard me complain about officiating before. I'm sure Steven's heard about it more than he would ever like to admit that I've complained about officiating. But last night was by far the most justified complaining I've ever done,
sure.
Being that the game started at what time?
7 o'clock our time.
And what time did the game start for the second time?
About 7:07 our time.
Yeah, exactly. About 7:07. And so 2 tip-offs and then the ridiculous foul count. I think at one point I looked at Stephen and the foul count was 19 Mercury and 10 Valkyries. And
free throws was
21 to 9 or some ridiculous, egregious nonsense.
Mm-hmm.
And so, yeah, the Mercury had its fair share of adversity before the game even started last night. But then again, as the game started for the second time, and then again as the game went on. And so I just wanted to point out that, this Mercury team is working against themselves sometimes. And not last night was one of those times. Nate Tibbetts has talked about like the intellectual aggression on the defensive end. And when you have Sammy Whitcomb fouling out of games, like it does, put your team in a situation, especially when you're shorthanded like you are. But you needed Sammy to play. And so the fact that Sammy fouled out, I actually went back and looked through Sammy's stats last night, and she had fouled out of one game that I could find before. So I was kind of impressed. She was, interestingly enough, she had a similar shooting line that night as well. But yeah, so definitely an interesting game in PHX Arena last night. But overall, I definitely impressed with the Mercury's fight and overall just willingness to stay locked in when things get really challenging for them.
Yeah, to the beginning of the game part, Nate spoke about it. Was it your question?
Mm-hmm.
Did he answer? And I think he said, if a game starts and is like a mistake like that happens within the first like 24 seconds, I think. So basically the first possession, the referees are allowed to pause the game and then in turn restart the game. Mind you, as he's saying this to us post-game, he's explaining it, understanding what the rule is, but confused as to the merits on which the rule was established under.
Correct. Yeah.
No different than you all are looking at me like, what in the world are you talking about?
Yeah.
No different than I'm thinking in my head, what in the world am I talking about? But that just leads to just a weird start to a very, very funky game. And again, all that matters is the dub at the end of the day. I've mentioned it on the Suns podcast, and some of my co-hosts disagree, but I don't care. There's no such thing as an ugly win. There's no such thing as an ugly win. All wins are beautiful. Because at the end of the day,
was beautiful.
That's what everybody wants.
But the game was hard to watch.
The game flow was ugly.
It was really not
diabolical.
$1 is $1, right, Stephen?
Correct.
But like a nice, crisp, just freshly printed $1, it's worth the same, but it feels better than having like a dingy, torn up.
For sure.
Like I get your point though.
Would you rather have one pretty
like,
dollar and one ugly dollar, or just one pretty dollar?
One pretty dollar, one ugly dollar. You know what I mean? I'm not saying like wins.
We still want the win.
Yeah. But I think it feels better when you get that nice, crisp. It doesn't smell like old people. You know what I mean? Like I think it's just you want the crisp one.
Listen, I ain't gonna be mad about the dollars I'm getting. I'm just happy.
Kevin's already in a better mood. He's thinking about getting money.
To quote Jay-Z, Jay-Z said, "There's no such thing as an ugly billionaire." And I think that there are life lessons that can be spoken on from that, as well as basketball lessons. I'll leave the life lessons alone because this is a basketball podcast. But no truer words have been uttered before, especially over wax. So,
well, nonetheless, we'll get into this Clutch Queens graphic that old Shane Diefenbach cooked up for us because this team has been really, really, really good in the clutch and working with some pieces that maybe they weren't anticipating to work with, especially in late game situations. Steven, you want to work us through this?
Yeah, for sure. So as you all can see on the screen here, we have a fire Clutch Queens graphic with needless to say, the crowns that are established over each of these players' heads. This team is just immaculate. This team just, again, figures out how to get it done. In the clutch, for people that might not know, clutch is deemed games within 5 points under the last 5 minutes of a game. So once it gets to that 5-minute mark of the fourth quarter, or naturally as well, even overtime, if the game is within 5 points, that's when these stats in particular come into play. So that's what the clutch is by statistical definition. And the Mercury are a team that gets it done as well as any other team. Now, they've played more clutch minutes and played in more clutch games this season than anyone else. So their numbers are going to look a little different just because of playing more in terms of volume. Nonetheless, 38.5% and knocking down 1.4 attempts from deep, but also making 3.8 attempts. The percentage is 5th in the league, again, bringing into context the fact that they've spent more time there than anyone else. But number one, they are in three-pointers made and three-pointers attempted in the clutch. That speaks to everything we talked about last week, in particular with Monique Akuamakani, as well as Kat Westbell being two of the better clutch three-point shooters in the entire W. Them scoring 10.7 points in the clutch obviously includes players like Alyssa Thomas and Satou Sabally, but certainly doesn't exclude those two players that we just got done speaking to. They're two not so rookies. And I think the other big things to kind of point out in there is that in the box score, they're plus 3.3 in the clutch, which is very, very, very good. That means they're winning those minutes. And that's what you want. If you're going to be playing close games, if you just have to, you would much rather be getting closer to double digits in terms of how you're winning in those situations. And the other half of that spectrum that we didn't get to yet is the defense. That's what they're dictating within that, because they're forcing more turnovers than anybody else. And that's naturally leading itself to the offensive numbers that we spoke to.
Yeah, and I mean, the thing that I keep going back to with this is, like, if the team is playing like this in the clutch without their star players, I mean, correct, the rest of the WNBA could be in for real trouble here in a month or so. And, like, you know, the general population wanted to talk about this team lacking depth, and, like, the biggest pieces of their depth are gone, and the Mercury's still on the win column, like third in the league right now. And so, you know, I definitely think that this is a good sign for what's to come for the Mercury. Kevin, if you want to throw that graphic back up real quick, just so Stephen Cork is through the defense real quick.
Yeah. Opponents are only shooting 34% from the field against this team in clutch play. In addition to that, their opponents have the highest turnover percentage. They're also at 19.7 is ridiculous. That is just astronomical. And that's because of the ways in which they can just ramp up the pressure, play with more versatility, and play with more activity than offense can kind of be anticipating or that they can kind of uphold against. And for them to lean into their identity in times of the most adverse and most urgent scenarios, again, speaks to a team that's bought into everything that the coaching staff is preaching, but it also speaks to a team that understands how it is they're going to go about being their best selves. Yeah. They know that they're not going to dictate with their offense, though they can, but even when they do, it's going to stem from the defense sustaining, compiling those kills that we talk about all the time and things like that. And it's going to be a process. Defense leads to offense, and then the offense allows for them to set their defense. And when they can sequence it that way, defense, offense, defense, there's few teams that can sustain at the levels that they can reach in terms of a ceiling.
Well, and like those clutch stats are including the Minnesota Lynx game that they lost on that turnover out of bounds timeout pass.
Yep.
Like it was an ugly pass, but I mean, they've kind of outweighed it with everything else that they've done well against, you know, I will give the Mercury this. They've beat teams they should, and the games that they've lost have been, I won't say expected, but they've been to really good teams that are going to make playoff, you know, appearances that are going to be competitive come playoff time.
Yeah, that's the thing. They're losing the teams that, or the games that they've lost rather, are to teams that have a certain level of anticipation for where they'll be at the end of the season, but also they're losing games on things that are controllable, turnovers.
Yep.
And like things like that. And turnovers probably the loudest thing. All the other thing being rebounds. That's probably the two loudest things to keep an eye on with this team. But again, for them to just have that thing in their DNA, that strand of DNA that they just figure things out and do it comprehensively. It's not one individual putting everybody on their back. It's comprehensive. The fact that they operate that way in particular is what's going to translate to wins later in the season, but also something that will translate to playoff wins because that's experience. And no one has more experience in these high urgency, high leverage scenarios this season than the Mercury so far.
Well, and we got to talk about Lexi Held because obviously last night the victory was off the back of the defense, that 18-1 run to end the game. But Lexi Held put this team in position to win this game. 11 first half points and then 13 second half points because she finished with 24, right? And so that's the most points from a WNBA rookie this season. And we're talking about an undrafted rookie in Lexi Held. So, Kevin, if you want to go ahead and bring up that Lexi Held graphic, light 'em up, Lexi. I love that you came up with that for her. We got to workshop a nickname for her, though.
For sure. Yeah, we got a lot of time. And I think she's going to give us a whole lot more opportunities to use it going for it, too. But, yeah, Lexi. What more can you say about her? I don't know if there is another player that has the firecracker pyrotechnic type of dynamic to their game as much as she does in their reserve unit, to where at this point it's not even surprising if she goes off for 20 just because of the ways in which she goes about doing that are very much complementary to everything else that the team does on the offensive end, but even more so on defense, which I feel like she uses to set the tone for her offense. Her ability to just guard the basketball in the most simple of terms, standing between her matchup, and the rim. She does it as well as anybody else on this team, and that's going to continue to give her opportunity to spend time on the court. The last couple of games, she's been playing over 20 minutes naturally because of the injuries, but she's someone that just gets it done. And over these last 2 games, she's averaging 20 points, shooting 57% from 2. Meaning that when she's getting to the paint, when she's getting to the rim, when she's getting to the mid-range, she's knocking down those shots. Not shy about putting the ball on the deck in any capacity. She is not just a shooter. But if you want to talk about her shooting, which we certainly are right now, she's also shooting 40% on 7.5 attempts a game the last 2 games. I mean, if you're talking about role players, a player that's maybe your second or third player that's coming in off the bench, and you're able to not necessarily expect this on a nightly basis, but know that that's something that could happen at any given moment in tandem with a style of play on defense that helps your team to stay afloat when you get into secondary and third type of lineups across your rotation. This is what you want. This is what every team wants. This is what made players like Leonie Fibich last season as good as they were with the Liberty. This is what made players like Bridget Carlton with the Minnesota Lynx last season as good as they were. And needless to say, you see where those 2 teams ended up. And it's naturally because they have these star players, but then they also have multiple role players that can punch up out of their weight class and sustain there, quite honestly. This is what you need if you're going to be a championship contending team.
Well, and we didn't even talk about the steal included on that graphic. And I feel like without that steal, the Mercury
She's a cookie monster.
I don't really like that name, but
she's a cookie monster.
I don't really like it, but
you ain't gotta like it. That's what she does.
I'm gonna just let it be for now.
That's what she does.
We're gonna workshop that.
We have Joel Pretty in the
Lexi can't be held.
That's like an MMA nickname though. Lexi can't be held. It's hard to be like, oh, that's can't be. You know what I mean? You can't call her can't be. Yeah. It doesn't really roll off the tongue, but it is a good in the middle nickname.
Yeah, for sure.
I don't know. I was workshopping it all night last night, and the best I could come up with, I texted Kevin, was Lexcellence. So we're still working on that.
That's what that was? I thought it was a typo. Genuinely. I thought you just had L Excellence. I didn't even put it together. But we got to go back to the drawing board.
I'm so glad your mic is on for this.
We gotta go back to the drawing board, or put a hyphen there next time.
I thought it was funny, and I thought you got it.
I didn't. I just was like, oh, excellence. Yeah, that was excellence. She was excellent.
Lexcellent.
She was Lexcellent.
There we go.
It's like Steffertless.
Yeah, it's one of those. It's one of those for sure.
Oh, man. Okay. Before we get to this ad break, though, we want to get to Kit real quick. Because Knockdown Kit has been no joke. And she's been one of the most reliable players on the court for the Phoenix Mercury, which is, I think, really exciting for Mercury fans because most of them really had no idea who she was until 3 or 4 weeks ago.
Yeah. She's everything that Nate and company spoke to her being, and why they were excited and anticipated and chose to bring her into their team on a guaranteed contract. There was no training camp needed. They felt like she served multiple specific needs and brought it with a positional in terms of height and advantage for them at that shooter position, whether she's at the 2 or the 3. So if we can get that graphic up, Kevo, we'd appreciate it. And just looking at what Kitija Laksa brings to everything that the Mercury are looking to establish. Again, bringing multiple options to use across multiple lineups with varying dynamics that they bring outside of just shooting. And from the sniper room, we're talking about Sammy Wickham, Lexi Held, and obviously Kitija Laksa, who we're speaking to now. Of that sniper group, each one of those 3 players brings something unique from the other 2. And with Kit in particular, it's the height at which she's taking her shots and making her shots from. She's not necessarily the high volume movement shooter that Sammy Wickham was at the peak of her powers as a sniper, but she certainly has a lot of those characteristics and qualities about her game that we've seen kind of rise to the forefront, especially when she's in lineups with Satou Sabally or Alyssa Thomas. Anytime they're getting double teamed, it's usually coming from the person that's guarding her. And that's not a gambit that you want to comfortably rely on, because she is lighting the nets on fire, as we just saw in the graphic. Not shy about taking shots, but also understands how to move around those 2 players to get the highest shot quality possible. Also showing the chops to put the ball on the deck. And she's had a couple of N1s that surprised not just the person that's guarding her, but looking at the reactions to the opposing team's bench. They're like, she got that in her game? Like, yeah, she can put the ball in the deck a little bit, just enough to where if you're closing out too hard, she can just counterpunch and get to the cup and finish at the basket. And she's knocking down the free throw.
Well, and her length and physicality is really underestimated, I feel like. Yeah. And so she really fits into the mold of what is going to make the Phoenix Mercury really good this season. And so when it comes down, to August and September, she is going to, I think Kit is going to be the X factor for this team come playoff time. And I know we're way earlier on that. We're not even a quarter of the way in the season yet. But if y'all want to hear all the other, way too early takes, just go ahead and follow me on Twitter, Erika and Stephen, because I've had them all, okay? Player of the year, coach of the year. I'm really grinding out the way too early takes. So, yeah. Is there anything else about last night that we're forgetting to get to before I get to this ad break real quick?
No, we can get to the ad break.
All right. Right after this quick ad break, we got Christian joining the show to talk about the Seattle Storm. 3rd matchup this season. I don't know if the Kathy Engelbert just forgot that there were other teams in the WNBA that they could schedule the Mercury to play, but nonetheless, here we go. All that and more after this quick break. Woo! We've been talking about money all day on the show already, dollars, dollars we don't have, dollars we do have, dollars we need, dollars we want to get. And who can help us get them is Mountain America Credit Union. They are committed to helping their more than 100 members. They got 100 branches throughout the West. That includes here in the Valley. You get 2 times the points on rewards credit card purchases through July 31st. Use your Mountain America rewards card and watch the points pile up. It's perfect for gas, groceries, travel, home projects, and all other purchases. Oh my gosh, perfect. I'm trying to build a chicken coop right now. This promotion is an easy way to stretch your dollar, or plural dollars. Since you earn twice as many rewards, redeem your double points for rewards like travel rebates, gift cards, and event tickets. Limited time only. Take advantage of it while you can. Details at macu.com/double. Loan on approved credit. Offer can change or be withdrawn at any time. Limited time offer. Terms and conditions do apply. The studio we're in, Circle K. The gas I got this morning, the bottle of water I got next to me, the store that helps supply me with all the things I need to be successful on Mercury game day and show day. Circle K, the Inner Rewards program. Listen, there's not many places that get me right like Circle K does on days that I have to drive to and fro the Phoenix territory. With my 20-cent gas card, my 5 cents off from my Inner Circle membership. Basically, they just take care of me every single time I stop by. And you can be taken care of too. All you got to do is download their little Inner Circle app, put in your phone number, your email address, bing, bada, boom. You get 25 cents off a gallon for your first 5 fill-ups. And then after that, you get 3 cents a gallon on every single fill-up. And you can work your way up to the 5 cent a gallon off. Gang like me, Stephen, and our lovely producer, Kevin, have all worked our way up into. So join the gang, get in the Inner Circle, download the Inner Circle Rewards app today, put in your email address and your phone number. And terms and conditions apply at participating locations. Visit circlek.com for details. Whew! We got a guest. I'm excited. Is this our first guest? No, we've had a guest on this season, right? No,
not since the season started. No.
Dang. All right. Well, Christian, come on. Welcome to the show. How the heck are you on this fine Friday morning? I don't know what time it is. Is it morning? Yeah.
It's still morning time.
How the heck are you today?
I'm doing fine. I mean, it's not morning here. It's about 1:30, so you guys are still lucky.
Yeah, well, good afternoon then. In that case, like I said, I mentioned this is the third time the Phoenix Mercury are matching up with the Storm, and I guess I should do a better job of introducing you. My goodness, beat writer for the Seattle Storm, and Stephen told me where from. I just don't have it pulled up in front of me. Stephen?
Yes, from Circling Sports, correct?
Circling Seattle Sports, yeah.
Circling Seattle Sports, yes. Yep. So Christian's been around the block a handful of times. Been covering the W for what, about 5-6 years now?
It's about 5 years now. The first year was the championship run in Chicago.
Yep.
Yeah, that's how me and Stevie met.
Yep. So yeah, went from covering the Sky to covering the Wings, and now he's covering the Seattle Storm. So you probably follow him on Twitter. If not, you've probably retweeted multiple of his tweets and just didn't know exactly who you were retweeting. So to put a face to the avatar and to the name that you may have known him as, also known as 808s and Snack Breaks, no longer that, but used to be the name.
That's been a while,
Twitter.
man. That's like, man. That's forever, right?
Yeah. But yeah, just trying to give people a little more familiar with you. And I guess we can go ahead and start it off. Starting with the Seattle Storm. What has impressed you most about this team? Because we tried to warn people that were keeping them out of their playoff expectations that they were doing the league a disservice by that, because this team was far too veteran heavy, far too experienced, far too talented.
Yeah, I think that's just, the way the W is these days. People just look at the roster and be like, well, all you got is Skylar and Nneka. How is it going to work? And despite the record being 4-4, Seattle's still one of the better teams in the league. I mean, we're not even a quarter of the way through the season yet. So I think, everyone's still kind of getting there. But, 10 games is coming up. So that's kind of a barometer of where you can see the temperature is for a team. But, yeah, Nneka, Skylar, you have Alicia Clark that's been up in the small forward spot where they kind of been thin at. But Gabby Williams and Erika Wheeler have been probably the hard lines of this team so far. I mean, you have Erika Wheeler in her last 5 games, like 12 points per game, around 50% from the field, 47 from 3. I mean, she's easily the best training camp contract to make a roster this year. So far, at least from what I've seen, she's been proving it. But yeah, this is a pretty deep team, and it's only so far through the season, so we'll see more of what they got so
far. With the names that you just mentioned, first thing that came to mind for me is the common denominator, all caps, DAWGS. Every last one of those players you just mentioned. I think probably start with Erika Wheeler, because Erika's bounced around the last couple of seasons, hasn't really found a sustained role that she's been in. A lot of times she was stepping up because of injury, but the team is not built for the way that she plays. So she was trying to fit to a role, and that naturally led to inconsistencies. She gets to Seattle, and it's clear that she's been implored to be herself. And that's be herself as a communicator, be herself in terms of personality, and be herself in terms of the dynamics that she brings to the court. What have you kind of seen most from her, and what have you kind of heard from Noelle Quinn and also from the other players about the impact that Erika has had since she stepped foot in Seattle?
The funny thing is, when Erika was first signed, everyone said, she's going to be this heavy veteran presence for us. She's been in the league for almost a decade now. She's been around the way. She's been on teams. She's played with Nneka before in LA, arguably her best year in the W so far. I think she's averaging around 14 points. I think that was also her all-star year. But, everyone thought that she was going to be this super veteran presence. And she said, I think it was during media day, she doesn't have to be. Like, you have Skylar, you have Nneka, you have Alicia Clark, you have Ezzy Magbagor, who's been in the league for a couple of years now. You have players come off the bench that have seen some time. Zaya Cook has, been in Australia. She's been overseas in Europe. They have the experience, So I think that's, probably, I think there's a joke going on, being the third oldest team in the league. Well, yeah, you're not looking like it so far. So, as far as Erika, just in general, she's been a breath of fresh air off the bench, starting when nobody needs her to. She's just kind of been there whenever they need her to. Scoring, defense, there's been so many possessions later in the fourth quarter where, she gets subbed in and she hits a 3 out of nowhere, and that keeps them in the game. So Erika's been a bright spot for Seattle, and honestly, if she wasn't there, I'd be kind of afraid of the bench scoring and where they are right now.
Well, and you already mentioned her, but Gabby freaking Williams. I don't know how anyone could think that this team isn't going to make a playoff run with Gabby Williams on their team. I mean, she's a hooper. She's proved it over and over and over again. I don't understand why we keep having to tell the class, to pay attention to when Gabby Williams is on the court. But just talk to us about what you've seen from Gabby this season, especially compared to last season.
Well, Gabby has done a lot. If you think about it, over the last calendar year, she comes to Seattle, after the Olympic silver medalist. They go in the playoffs, unfortunately, the first round exit. But now she's back full time after coming back from Europe, and she's here the entire season. She won't be going to Eurobasket. She already announced the same as Dominique Malonga. But Gabby Williams has been arguably the most important player for this team so far this year, for the simple fact that there is no real small forward depth on this team besides Alicia Clark. And I think that's probably one of the reasons why she's had to be so impactful on both sides of the floor. I mean, she's shooting, literally, it's a career stat every way down the line. Assists, points, steals, shooting-wise, defense, the deflections. She's just so impactful in what she does, and she's been doing it for a while now. This is not something new. Gabby Williams is an international superstar, but she's just now finally coming into her own in the W. And I couldn't be more happy for her, especially considering the way that it's helping Seattle when they need it. She's kind of been everything that they need.
I think the big thing for me with Gabby, just on offense, she gets rightfully most of her attention for the all W defender that she is. And needless to say, the impact of the other four players when she's on the court defensively is immense. It's unignorable on a possession by possession basis. But I think most of the growth for her has come on the offensive end. The confidence she's playing with, the ability to just put the ball on the deck and have the spacing to where she doesn't have to worry about help coming from all over the place because she's on the floor with NECA, as well as Ezzy, as well as Skylar, as well as Alicia Clark as well, and even Erica Wheeler when she's shooting north of 40% to start the season. So the spacing that she's working in has definitely benefited her drives, which is her strong suit on offense. But 43.6% on almost 7 attempts, or almost 5 attempts from deep, this season. That's the space that I feel like maybe she had the biggest question mark with, because teams got comfortable saying, okay, Gabby, we can play you soft because we want you to shoot, but now you can't be as comfortable, no different than kind of like we talked about last season for Mercury fans with Kalia Copper. You can't just say that you want that person to shoot because they will comfortably oblige. And next thing you know, you're down 10 points because you decided to go under a couple of screens.
I think that's probably one of the biggest parts of Gabby Williams' maturation this season as far as her shooting. She's comfortable just rising up and shooting from anywhere. And I think that's only enabled her driving skills so much more. Her first step is already one of the quickest in the league. But then you pair that with her shooting ability so far, the left corner, the right corner, but the break, you really can't defend her. And then you think about all the other players she has around her that you have to think about as well. You really have to pick your poison, as Coach Noel has said since December from last year. But now this year, even minutes when Dominique Malonga's on the floor, that is one pairing that when Dom eventually gets around the 10 to 15 minutes consistently, and her and Gabby are running that pick and roll like I've seen over the last couple of games, it is gonna be nasty. There's just so many segments of this team that just haven't really come together yet because still early in the season. But I can't wait to see it. But Gabby running the pick and roll with Dom, especially with Ezzy, Skylar kind of runs in mostly with NECA to start the game. That's pretty their bread and butter to open up games. But Gabby in general, as far as a player, I don't think I've ever seen her play this confidently. Even overseas, it's different. Overseas play is different from the W play. But the way she's battling through contact, the way she's finishing at the rim, she's really become a 3-level scorer before our eyes. And I don't think anyone really could say they saw this coming, especially from 3, like you said. Defenses just kind of just sag off and, okay, Gabby's in the corner. We're not going to worry about that. Worry about her driving, getting to the line, or just kind of getting to the rim. But now, kind of game book for everywhere on the floor. And I think that's making defenses scout a little bit harder, which makes Seattle's players kind of thrive a little bit better because now you have to worry about Gabby, you have to worry about Skylar more. And you have right now around 5 players shooting around league average or better, around 40% from 3. Really have to pick your poison with Seattle.
And you already mentioned her, but Skylar Diggins, she's having a year, and she's one of the most electrifying players on the Seattle Storm roster, in my opinion. But I've been really excited to see her continue to grow into this team. I feel like the leadership role she's been able to take on this year has been new for her. So I really like what I'm seeing out of her. But what are you seeing out of Skylar?
Skylar, first of all, this team does not move. It doesn't go anywhere without Skylar Diggins. Like, that's first and foremost. Everyone always says she's the head of the snake, but she's also the heartbeat. She is the aorta of the Seattle Storm. Without that pumping, this team goes nowhere. On both ends of the floor, as far as just her leadership, we've seen that kind of grow this season. Her taking the kind of the main, reins with Nneka, more so at the top of the key, as the lead guard. Skylar has just kind of been exactly what they've needed her to be. She's having a career year also in a lot of different areas. She's having a better success getting to the rim with the spacing that's around her. She's one of the best guards as far as getting to the rim behind, Kelsey. And I think it was Brittany Sykes. Yeah, she's around like 70% at the rim. Skylar's a little bit below that, of course, because there's other players on this team that get more. But yeah, Skylar has just been everywhere on the floor. Defense, you need to steal. Kind of that's what makes this team so dangerous. Is you have a couple players that do the same thing and kind of just work really well together, especially on the top of the key, on the side. Like the nail help has kind of just been crazy. The help defense in general this entire season. It's only been 8 games, I know, but it's so much better than what I've seen last year. Like there are a couple other things on defense that had to get fixed, but as far as the help presence, the rotations have been timely, which you couldn't really say that last year, of course. The team is still developing, but so far this year, that's been probably one of the biggest parts that I've seen Skylar kind of develop, and Gabby as well too.
Yeah, I can't even lie, man. It's been a lot of fun to see Skylar play what feels like a restrictionless and kind of free flowing the typical Skylar type of game. It doesn't feel like and I don't think she ever was, but naturally it's a little different when you're coming back from having a baby. Like, let's just be honest. And then you have to ramp up with conditioning, but also do that while also sharpening your skill and trying to get back to that level that you're expected to be at, which is inevitably going to end in a Hall of Fame career. Like, that's a lot to kind of try to work to get back up to within a couple months. That's tough. So the fact that she even played last season was a miracle and a blessing, but also speaks to the type of dog that she is. And I think this season, now having had a full offseason to also train, but also play in Unrivaled and honestly dominate there as well, and then come into training camp hitting the ground running. Mm-hmm. In the second season where there's continuity and there's a shared understanding between her and Noelle.
And Nneka.
And Nneka as well. Like, we're seeing her in a very special space right now, and that's amazing to say considering she's so far advanced into her basketball career right now.
That was kind of one of my biggest issues with the rhetoric surrounding Skylar Diggins last year to start the season. First of all, she hasn't played in a while. It's been over a season. This is a brand new team, so many different pieces. And, it wasn't just her struggling. It was the entire team. It's a team for a reason. And like Coach Noelle said last year, she just had a child. She needs some grace. And to see her kind of catapult from what she did last year, first of all, she should have been an all-star last year. Just say that first of all. She should have been an all-star last year. Hopefully that decision is rectified this year, considering the way that she's playing. I think she will be. But to see her just get even better at what she's already been great at, Hall of Fame level so far this year, in her age 35 season, that is remarkable. Again, this team does not move without Skylar, and the Seattle is blessed to have her. They an abundance of riches as far as point guards and guards over the last 3 decades, really, since they've been in the league. But yeah, Skylar is, again, the head of the snake, and without her, this team goes nowhere. And as you've seen, when Skylar struggles, this team struggles. And that's why so far, over the last couple of games, she's been getting back in her game. That's why they write that win over the Wings over the last game.
Not too much on the Wings. DLS Wings is in literally 1 hour and 15 minutes, okay? But I don't know how we've gotten this far without asking you just straight up about Madam President. Nneka Ogwumike herself. One of the most versatile players in the league. And
Ever.
Yeah, I shouldn't say in the league because ever is a better word for it. But, similar to the same vein as Skylar, she's a little bit later stage in her career. And, she's playing lights out right now. Really good basketball. And so, how can you've talked about the head of the snake with Skylar, but how can the snake work together to slither to get, over the 500 hump, hopefully beat this Phoenix team who they had a really, really tough time with to open the season?
Well, first off, the fact that the Mercury are 6-3 right now, and the third best record in the league with 6 rookies on the roster and only 1 was drafted, like, that's a Cinderella story. That does not happen, man. Like, that's crazy. This is a completely different team compared to, I think there was a third or fourth game of the season. But as far as for Seattle to get to where they need to be to get over 500, honestly, just stick to what gets you your cookie. Points off turnovers, steals, deflections, playing in the open court, not having to worry about too much in the half court. I mean, they can run, a really good offense in the half court, but they're not the same unless they're disruptive in the passes lanes. Getting these turnovers, scoring with them, and not just getting them, also scoring on them. You can't just really get to the other side of the court and then not capitalize on them, and that's kind of been the trend of the last couple of games. Similar from last year, there's been a couple of issues with the defense. I'm not even really worried about the offense as far. It's been kind of the defense has been allowing teams to get back into games in the latter half of the game, especially in the third quarter. They were one of the best first half teams, but the last time I checked, they were around like -16, -17 in the second half. And that's kind of been the third quarter pushes to the fourth quarter fails. I mean, you saw the Atlanta Dream game, where they gave up, was it 40 to Alicia Gray and Ryan Howard in the second half? I mean, they combined for 60 overall. That was a pretty bad game, but we've also seen them play pretty well in situations. Again, they had a 3-game win streak after the 3-game losing streak. It really just continues the continuity, keeping the main thing, and that's when you started on Saturday against the Mercury. Just kind of staying what you've been at, continue the pace of play that they've been at, a record place at least start the season. And that's been one of their main bread and butter, just get in your opponent's jersey and stay there. And that's kind of what this kind of been lacking over the last couple of games, despite, just, again, coming to the season without Jordan Horston, without Katie Lou Samuelson. These are key injuries that, and I know we don't think about them a lot, but I watch so many games, of course, and being on the beat, I'm like, man, this is a great moment with Jordan Horston would be great, But unfortunately, it's only 10 place on the roster right now. He's not there. But hopefully, with everything that's going on, they can still continue to be the team that I know that they can be, which is, arguably a championship contender. With the roster, the talent that's on this roster, they should be there when the Devils start breaking. But that kind of starts right now.
Yeah, for me, when I look at Seattle, whether they're going up against the Mercury or when they're playing other teams, or even just their roster on paper, I see a team no different than Phoenix as well as New York that I feel like will be top 3 in defense come the season's end. And it's because of the pedigree of multiple players at the top of their roster. And for each one of those 3 teams, and I don't have to run through it, you see people that align with the Defensive Player of the Year race. You see people that align with all W first or second team defense in multiple capacities. And you see coaches that align with the defensive end as well. And I think that in particular, having all 3 of those boxes checked off in droves, the ways in which they can, and then also being able to sustain a certain level of defensive activity, but also defensive versatility across multiple lineups. That's really daunting, honestly, because a lot of teams, when things get tight, they lean into their offense. But what about if your strength is to take away what they might want to do best? And then you could also, in turn, have identifiable names to where you can go and play through them on the offensive end after you get that stop at a meaningful moment. Mm-hmm. All 3 of those teams have that in droves. That's a luxury. But that's also quite literally those teams' identities as well, each one of them. They go about it differently, but I think the fact that they have a certain ceiling that they can reach defensively that other teams simply cannot, and honestly, their floors is equally as high as most teams' probably average days on defense. And that's always going to put them in a position to play the style of basketball that they want to, because they can just simply take things away from you that most teams can't. So I'm just curious, Chris, what's been your thoughts about the defense from the Storm this season so far, and what do you kind of see as their ceiling as far as that side of the ball goes?
Well, first off, despite over the last 4 or 5 games, this team is still allowing the 4th fewest points in the league. Like, that is something to hang your hat on. No matter whether it's a top hat, it's a bowler hat, or you got a top hat, like kind of you're out there looking like Sir Abraham Lincoln. That's something to hang it on. Right now, again, they're allowing opponents to shoot around 31% from 3. That's around like 4th or 5th in the league best. Despite whether they're scoring, they're still doing what they do on the defensive side, which keeps them in games. We've seen that multiple times again. This is probably one of the best perimeter attacks they've had in a while. A lot of players who you can kind of just throw at people. Again, you have Skylar, you have Gabby, you have Zia Cook off the bench, where I feel like she is going to be so impactful for this team down the stretch. She's going to get more minutes eventually. Of course, we're only 8 games through the season, but whenever she's in, you need a bucket, you need a deflection, you need a stop on defense. She's got you covered like All-State, man, and she's been there. So that's one of the main players I think that's needs to get more attention towards that. Why that perimeter defense is so good the minutes that she plays. They were one of their best rotations in the floor is when she's on the floor, surprisingly. And that I think that's been around like 20, 24 minutes so far. I have to double check. But again, Zia Cook wrote this team. She's growing to the player that everybody thought she could be. And this is kind of the environment that she's growing. And everybody thought that a certain coach and a certain player would kind of get that out of her. I mean, you got a lot of that. You got Coach Noel, you got Ebony, you got Pokey, you got Skylar, you got Nneka, you got Gabby, you got Alicia Clark. Like these are names that are going to go in the Hall of Fame one day. So, that is a lot for a young player to take in. And then, on this roster as well, still a lot of considerable youth on this team. And we're seeing them grow up as well. Dominique Malonga has played the most minutes recently that she has. Her defense has improved. Eventually, at one point, she's probably going to have to play a little bit of the small forward. Not, in major spurts, but she can do it because I believe in the fluidity. We've seen that on tape. But yeah, other than that, this team is really deep. I can't wait to see what it looks like throughout the season. But as far as right now, the Phoenix Mercury, that's a pretty hot team, man. Again, 6-3. The depth on this team. Catherine Westbrook has probably been one of my favorite players that's been flying under the radar. You wouldn't think that her driving ability is as powerful as it is, but I was watching a game last night. I'm like, okay, man, she might have got the bucket, but she kicked it out. She got another 3. Lexi Held is shooting like one of the best players in the league right now over the last couple of games. I mean, statistically, she is. Last night, set another career high. This team is deep. And Satou Sabally, you think about all the other players that are playing well, and she's leading the ship right now. AT has missed the last 4 games now, 5 games. Yeah, so that is something to look at. Again, a team that doesn't have Natasha Mack, that does not have one of the best players in the league, and Kahleah Copper is still staying afloat. I love the Haley Jones pickup. I was waiting for her to get that call because I knew that she would. She's a kind of a tweener between the 2 and 3 that can do a little bit of everything. And with this roster, I have to send my apologies over to Nate Tibbetts, man. I got to send him a box of chocolates or something because I wasn't really a big believer in the first year, but this kind of just shows you when you give a coach the roster that they need to kind of bring you to make you the meal, you got to bring them the right groceries. And so far this season, Tibbetts' ball is working. So I can't wait to see what it looks like tomorrow.
No, it's funny you said that because I asked General Manager Nick Urin on Media Day about how challenging is it to build a roster specific to a head coach's needs to put him in the best position to be successful in a sustained manner. And he used the metaphor that you used quite literally. He said a lot, and it wasn't like filler. It was very detailed conversation, but the main objective and main point he got to is that essentially the front office's job is to get the ingredients for the coach to cook, and then the coach has to cook the meal. And needless to say, I feel like that's a lot of what they did over the offseason. And to that point, Chris, I'm curious, what do you see as the ceiling for this Mercury team this season? Obviously, we still haven't seen them healthy yet, so that might be some gray area with that. But just off of what you've seen so far this season and what you could presume to see going forward, where do you kind of see this team topping out?
Coming to this season, I wasn't skeptical of the Mercury. I was kind of wondering where they would fit in the hierarchy of this league. You still have the Lynx and the Liberty kind of running away right now, still undefeated. It's crazy, right? It's just them and then everybody else at the bottom. It's just exactly like, ooh. But the Mercury, still surprising me. I'm not really worried about the integration of Kahleah Copper and Natasha Mack until I've seen what they can do last year. I've watched Natasha Mack back when she was over at Lublin in Poland. So if y'all know where that is, yeah, she was hooping over there. Really happy to see her get this opportunity in the W, be on the roster continuously. She's going to be impactful in what she does. Kalani Brown, another player, I was really happy to see get another chance. She didn't get a lot of playing time in Dallas. And you're seeing what she can do in the minute she has. This team is deep, man. And they're youthful. They're bouncy. There's not a lot of teams like that right now. A lot of teams are kind of, on the veteran side, they kind of can't really defend like that. You see that working out kind of in LA. It's not really working out as well as you thought it would start the season. A lot of other teams kind of fit in that mold as well. Kind of surprised Seattle right now. Going around the curve, kind of figure out how to gel right now. But the Mercury still, again, 6 rookies on the roster. 6-3 in the league after now they have sole possession after winning that game last night over Atlanta's 5-3 they play tonight. Crazy. I do think the Phoenix Mercury though can be one of the top teams to finish at the end. It just depends on how they kind of get to the playoffs. Again, Liberty and the Lynx, they've been here, done that. And you got the Aces, been there, done that. I feel like another team we're counting out, Drew Lloyd with the Aces. It's going to work eventually. But the league is so top heavy again. Caitlin Clark with the fever. She's going to come back eventually. They're going to be healthy. The second half of this season is going to be tremendous, and then Phoenix Mercury are going to be standing right there. It really just depends on when Kalia Copper gets back. I'm not really sure the updates. Have you guys heard anything about that?
Within the next probably 2 to 3 weeks, probably 3 weeks being the longest, but she's back on the court doing basketball activities daily.
So 2 to 3 weeks. Do you think they bring her back before All-Star break?
I think she's back before the break. I just don't know I don't know how many games she'll play before then though. That's the thing I'm kind of looking at.
Yeah, I would love to see her play before All-Star break, kind of knock that rust off and get ready. And then that second half push. A couple games before All-Star break is going to be really key for her because she hasn't played and it's been a while. So, yeah, Hercules going to be good, man. We got a really fun season this year.
I kind of like this guy.
I knew you would.
He's filling my head with confidence about my squad.
I mean, think about it. This team they're deep in every position. And you've missed 4 games with AT and you stayed above water. That's something to say about this team that people didn't really think could be. So, again, Nate Tibbetts out there doing his thing. Nick Urin, glad they got the team that they needed. Funny enough, I got that from a reference from, I can't remember what it was. I think it was Bill Belichick with the Jets in the 90s. It was an ESPN documentary. You know what I'm talking about, right? Yeah, that's where I got that from. Yeah.
For sure. I was also going to ask you, too, before we get up out of here. Just for I'm not asking for, like, intel or anything, but just what have been your observations of the whole Lee Yuru kind of debacle that's the dust has settled on over the last, 2 days now?
Yeah. Honestly, I'm not really surprised considering the way that everything's been going. I didn't think that any bench players can ask for a trade to pop up out of nowhere, before 10 games into the season. But, the way that has gone as far as the minutes, I feel like there have been a lot of different times throughout the season so far where Coach Quinn could have brought in a reserve to kind of help a game that kind of just didn't really happen so far, whether it be Dominique Malonga or Lee Yuru or Isaiah Cook. I mean, Lexi Brown has gotten so many DNP CDs so far. I'm not really sure what's going on with that. Start the season, she said she's going to be fully healthy, and I mean she's healthy. She's practicing. She's on the bench. She's in the warm-ups and everything. So there hasn't been any announcements. So I'm pretty sure that's just kind of fit in the game in the mold when you get in. So far, Isaiah Cook has been producing more on both ends. Maybe that's playing into that. Dominique Malonga has been playing more. I'd need to see that continue. But really, just in general, this team, it's going to be there. It's going to take some time. Again, 4-4 right now, the first 10 games of the season. But I just need to see more from the bench and the minutes to be able to get more from the bench. That's just kind of one of the things that's been going on so far. And, I think that's, again, played into this whole situation, the minutes, not really being used. And, I was kind of worrisome at first, after that game because, she scored 6 points. The first 6 of, I think it was the first 6 of the first 14. Those 2 huge threes, and she got a foul, and then she didn't play the rest of the game. And then there was the announcement. As far as just in general with Lee Yuru, don't have any information of what's going on. Roberto Rodriguez did report that there was something going on as far as the China national team kind of forcing their way through to make the demand. Jackie Powell of the Knicks later came through and confirmed it. So, those are, the confirmations are pretty verifiable source. So that's, it's unfortunate because, Percy Allen of the Seattle Times spoke to Lee. I'm not sure if that was through her camp or through the team, but basically just said that, she loved Seattle and, what was going on. And she didn't really want to leave, but then again, at the same time, the playing time is what's important to her and she kind of wants to be happy. And, I kind of want the best for her. And I hope that, Seattle is able to get her to a team that will be able to use her more times than not. And it can also get a player back that can help them, kind of stretch the floor. I was thinking maybe they could throw something at Connecticut, get Bria Hartley, but considering the way they brought her in, she didn't even play in training camp. She got a deal and then just boom, she's on the roster. That's probably not going to happen. But, as far as a return for that trade, I'm not really seeing much out there. And then again, I'm not, a cap whiz, so kind of have to pair her with something else unless you're trying to get another player because she's right now making a rookie minimum. So that's going to be kind of difficult to get the player that you need at that contract. You kind of have to pair her with Katie Lou Samuelson. If you want to do that, it's a business. So, you have to see what's going on with that. But I think that move comes within a week or so because you don't want to keep dragging this out.
Would just like to say, Lee is significantly talented. Me and Chris were covering the Chicago Sky together when James Wade brought her in, and the unexpected impact that she had immediately. It was fun, but it was also fun to watch the confusion from opponents. Like, yo, what is this?
Who's that?
Who is that? And why is she having an impact on a game like this? She going on the scouting report. Like, Lee is a very skilled player and has added so much skill since that first season that she came over to the WN. So I would love to see her go to Golden State. Not just because the Mercury just got done playing them last night, but I feel like they're a team that needs some front court size and also some more skill to go with Temi Fagbenle down there in that front court.
Mm-hmm.
Also to kind of give Kayla Thornton a little bit of a break because she's just been guarding all types of 4s and 5s all season long.
Girl's
Give her
tired.
at least one piece that will allow her to play more of her natural position on defense. Will also set her up more on offense because they can certainly use the help on offense too. Especially with Tip Hayes being in and out of the lineup right now. I think Lee would be fun in Golden State. I don't know how easily they would be able to find a trade that appeases both teams because of her low salary right now, but I think that would be a perfect match for her if it was to happen.
Yeah, I mean, I would love to see that for a simple fact. First of all, back with Lee with Chicago, you see a 6'7" player come onto the court. No one else is that tall. Why is she driving from the 3-point line and then going to the free throw line? Like this insane athletic ability from a player of that stature that you just don't expect. I would love to see that with Golden State, considering they are kind of thin in that area. Kayla Thornton been kind of playing out of position more at the 3 more than the 4 than she's been doing. Stephanie Talbot is around there. I think she's making around like 160. I'm not exactly sure. I have to go and double check that. But you could also figure out a way to get her from there if Golden State is worried, kind of come away from her. But that just really depends. Yeah, exactly. I'm not really sure. There's a lot of different options that she could go because I really do think that she could be an impact player off the bench. Give her 10 to 15 minutes so you can really see what she can do. There are some issues as far as defense and timing that she kind of has to get, accustomed to. But we've been seeing that in real time. She may, lose a step, but guess what? That recovery and that wingspan is a block. We've seen that. So, yeah, I'm just really wanting her to get to a position where she can be utilized, completely and, just be happy with doing what she does. Kind of like when you want to be happy at your job. You want to, you want to go to work and be like, man, I'm not going to play. I'm just being my jumper all day, So I get that.
Well, we got to get out of here. So is there anything else I'm forgetting before we get?
Prediction for Saturday's game. Real quick. No, that's not necessarily score, but just who you think wins and why. I'll go ahead and kick it off. I think everything's been fun with Phoenix so far.
He's about to make me sick. He's about to make me sick.
The urgency and the level that Seattle's been playing with so far, and they're also being more comprehensively healthy. It's going to be tough for Phoenix to get this one. And the turnover issues that we've seen against a team that is top 3 in turnover points scored per game, that's not good for your game process. I think Seattle goes and gets this one, and I think it's going to be a close play game, but I think Seattle's going to go and get it, and I think it's going to be the turnovers that hurts Phoenix more than anything else.
Christian, you can go ahead. I'll go last.
Honestly, I don't think it's going to be just the turnovers. I think it's going to be how they come. I think Gabby Williams is going to be in Satou Sabally's pocket all the game long, and that's going to cause issues because as great as his team is, they kind of do lack a consistent ball handler. Sammy Wickett has been doing great, kind of in that role. Monique Cole McConney has been doing great. I wrote about her during my first rookie report because of the way that she's been playing. One of the most better rookies that no one's really been talking about throughout the season. Whether she's playing or not, she's on the bench, her impact is there. But, Seattle is a team that feels the pressure right now, again, with everything that's been going on with this team. I think they go in and get that dub. And, maybe about 10 points, maybe about 12. Because, again, everyone's talking about Seattle. But yet, when they do, this team usually comes and they come to play. And that's going to be a chance. Again, points off turnovers, playing in the open court. Skylar Diggins has to shoot better from 3 over the last 5 games, shooting around like 16%. That's going to be a problem. You can't, just kind of keep the play that as far as from behind the arc that's been so far. Got to be a little more consistent with that. But other than that, Seattle has still been right there in almost every game. So yeah, this is going to be one of those games where they go in and they get that W.
I'm gonna say it.
Rebounds. That what you gonna say?
Well, I always need this team to rebound. If you've been listening to this PHNX Mercury show, you know one thing about me. I need this team to close out a defense possession and get the rebound. But I want to see this team get better late in game situations, and I think we've seen them do that. Like when I think back to last night, and even when you compare the first Lynx matchup to the second Lynx matchup, and so I'm hoping that pays dividends tomorrow, and that maybe it helps the Mercury stay a little calmer throughout the rest of the game and they lessen those turnovers. Now, whether or not that actually happens or not, your guys' guess is as good as mine, but I'm riding with my gang and Mercury till I die. So Mercury's gonna take the big dub tomorrow, and I'm gonna be on this post-game show with my winning Thunder sticks. I literally told Stephen at the top of the hour I'm not taking out my losing Thunder sticks for weeks, plural. So yeah, I'm going Mighty Mercury. Kevin, you got a prediction real quick?
Mighty Mercury.
Ayo. All right. Well, before we get out of here, I do got to remind you guys, there is Kevin, do we have the takeover for the baseball? Okay, never mind. Well, when you watch PHNX D-Back show later today, you can learn about our pool party takeover because it's July 3rd. And I'm going to be honest, when I heard about this, I was incredibly jealous because why are y'all going to the pool party without me? I'm not having this. This is egregious. Kevin?
I can't swim. I'm not going nowhere.
It's not a deep pool. It's like 4 feet.
I second what Kevin said.
Oh my God. Y'all are so dramatic. Like, this is crazy. Christian, just to give you some context here, there is a pool inside of our baseball stadium. So they are throwing a pool party for a D-backs game. Does that not sound like the biggest blast to watch a baseball game on July the 3rd with a glizzy in your hand? Maybe Clea Copper just won something the night before, who knows? And then bing bada boom, you watch the D-backs get a big comeback dub in Mercury fashion. I mean,
first off, I'll say this. The Miami Marlins, they stole the whole dunk tank pool thing idea from the Arizona Diamondbacks. They've had it first. I don't know how long it's been. But yeah, I mean, I know how to swim. Y'all don't know how to swim? That's crazy. Steven, you from Chicago, bro. What you mean?
Well, they have like rivers and stuff there.
Oh,
well, they got pavement. People think the Midwest is like Montana. It's like
beach,
if you live in Chicago, if you live in St. Louis,
day.
if you live in Kansas City, like probably 20 minutes outside of where you're from, there's some good nature. But yeah, no, I can't swim. I never needed
not a big beach, but a little beach on like this river thing.
It's like, I don't know.
I've read about it on the internet, but anyways, nonetheless, I've never been to Chicago. My bad, everybody. I've been to 40 some odd states. Illinois is not one of them. Sorry about that, squad. I don't mean to disappoint Steven so, egregiously, but I can't believe you can't swim.
I can't swim.
What's the use? Stay out the water. You don't need it.
Soon California's going to drop off, and then we better learn how to swim real quick.
You said California. I don't know if you know where we're located.
Exactly.
I'm not located in California.
The elevation,
I know.
And then boom, now we got
California,
water.
Florida going to be underwater.
Oceanside
I'll be
property.
moving inland.
Back to Missouri, Kevin goes.
If it comes to it. If it comes down to it.
Good, Lanto. All right. Well, my bad on the beachfront take. Okay. My sincere
Show up to the takeover, though. Show up to the takeover. I won't be in the water, but I will probably be there.
Literally, exactly. Kevin's going to the damn party, and I'm not getting to go. And that's really what my bitter feelings come, from. So,
yeah, that's crazy. We went from that to everything else that happened in that conversation. But appreciate you, Chris, for stopping in. You the man. I'm glad to always talk basketball with you. I mean, at this point, the Mercury and the Storm are lined up to play in the playoffs and just played 9 times in this season.
For real. This is ridiculous. I'm kind of glad that both teams are kind of mediocre right now, so then they don't have to meet in the Commissioner Cup Championship for just an extra game, because what the hell is this schedule, Kathy? I'm calling direct. Like, this is direct flight. Kathy, what the hell is going on?
3 times in barely 3 weeks of play is insane.
10 games, 3 games against the Storm. That's ridiculous. So, anyways, nonetheless, like Steven said, thank you for joining us, Christian. We will be having you back on the show. I'm like, oh, will you come back? I'm not asking. I'm telling you, you will be back on the show. So, hope that's okay. Period. Well,
just let me know.
Go ahead.
I was saying, just let me know.
We got you. Well, I've been Erika. You can find me over on Twitter at Erika Lee Day. You can find Steven at StevenPG3. Christian at Christian with no I, WNBA. period. I got someone's @ correct today. I'm proud. And then you can also follow Kevo at Kevo Posts on Twitter. You can follow him on the Wildcat Show later today at 2 o'clock. Me on the DLLS Wing Show, or all of us together at the PHNX Mercury on Twitter. I put out a freaking hilarious video of Gypsy Rose this morning. So if you don't follow us over on PHNX_Mercury, then you miss out on the funniest win meme of the day. So go hit that follow button on PHNX_Mercury. And we will actually be back with you guys tomorrow post-game for the Seattle Storm and Phoenix Mercury post-game show. If you're not doing anything, say like 10:30, 11 o'clock tomorrow night, maybe you can hit us up for the post-game show is all I'm saying. So I'll be DMing you about that. If you guys need anything else in the meantime, though, hit us up on Twitter or become a diehard and hit us up in the Discord Die Hard Discord lounge. Good gosh. Yep. All right, y'all have a wonderful day. I'm out of here, GG's.
We all silly like the mayor.